Hi, I'm Marcus Fairs, founder and editor-in-chief of Dezeen, and I'm delighted to welcome you to Grohe Day at Virtual Design Festival. And I have Paul Flowers, who's Chief Design Officer at LIXIL here. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Marcus. Thanks very much for inviting me on today to talk.
You're very welcome. And tell us, what is LIXIL and what's its relationship to Grohe?
So LIXIL is the parent company. LIXIL was founded in 2011, the actual name LIXIL, by an amalgamation of 5 companies coming together in Japan, big building technology companies. But it has legacy brands which span back more than 100 years. One of the brands in the LIXIL portfolio, which was acquired in 2015, is of course the Grohe brand. My original relationship was I was Chief Design Officer at Grohe from November 2005 to 2015, and then migrated over to LIXIL and became the Chief Design Officer of LIXIL Global Design. So that's all of the LIXIL brands throughout the world. More than 1 billion people touch brands within the LIXIL portfolio every single day. So you can imagine it's really important that we use design as an interface to create products which are relevant, which add value, and which are insight born. So they're born from an insight. They're born from trying to make an experience or a product better for the consumers.
What kind of products does Grohe make? And can you give us some examples of innovation and good design that you think stand out?
So let me just start with some of the design tools, and then I'll explain to you how we use those to create unique Grohe products and products that you clearly define or identify as Grohe. We took the brand values that we created for Grohe and we created a semantic DNA. We call them signature elements. We use 3, I would say, 3 clear elements that were embedded in all of the Grohe products. So they would create a clear identity, regardless if it was a shower or faucet or ceramic. And having that semantic DNA coded into the product ensured really that it was clearly differentiated from other brands on the market. Now, once you have that clearly differentiated semantic, you really understand clearly what the Grohe brand stands for, what it represents, then that really allowed us to dial up the consumer centricity. So we spend an immense amount of time now doing this thing that I call pre-search. So instead of just doing, like, if you like, in the old days, people would research things, do you like this better than that? Fortunately, we don't do that anymore. So what we do is we spend a lot of time at the beginning doing pre-search, understanding consumers' needs, latent needs, unarticulated needs. We do ethnographic research. Our design team travels all over the world in search of trends. So we use trends also as input to try and understand what consumers will want in the future. And we use all of these elements, and they help us form a picture about what consumers would like. And sometimes even before consumers know exactly what they would like or they articulate what they like, we form an opinion, and that allows us to innovate in a relevant way. We also have other developing technologies in manufacturing. So, for example, we're using 3D printing at Grohe now. We launched a collection called Icon that really looks at how can we deliver water in the optimum position, but using as few materials as possible. So we're literally skinning water, and 3D printing allows us to reduce the size of the waterways, really reduce down the amount of unnecessary material used. So we can use 1/5 of materials to deliver water in the same optimum position. And that's giving us huge creative freedoms to form it in different ways. And the result is a product that's much lighter to ship. So it's much, much better for the environment in terms of its carbon footprint to ship the product. And of course, in the materials it consumes, it's much, much less than a traditional faucet. So 3D printing's a super interesting technology for us. And Grohe now is finding ways to bring that onto the market as a viable alternative to the standard manufacturing practices.
So what's coming up next for Grohe then, Paul? What are the trends that are driving consumers and driving the sector forward?
At Grohe, we've identified 3 major macro trends, which we're exploring through our products and, let's say, in our strategies. The 3 macro trends are urbanization, sustainability, and then one that I think is particularly apt at this moment in time, which is health and well-being, and that boils down into hygiene. The reason why we study urbanization as a macro trend, we're very interested, by by 2050, United Nations have said that more than 68 people, as you know, 68% of the population will live in urban areas. So that as a whole set, if you like, is super interesting for us, and that challenges us to think about how will those environments be in the future. How will people divide spaces? How will those hybrid spaces and how will they utilize that space? As more people move into the city and environments tend to become smaller. So we're looking at hybrid spaces like the bathroom and the bedroom coming together. And what does that mean? So for example, I'm sitting in my kitchen right now, and if you look what happened in the past in kitchens, as people went to professional environments, they went to restaurants and they had open plan kitchens, and that was a great experience. People wanted to bring those elements back to their home. They opened up the dining room now into the kitchen area, but that gives lots of challenges for the products, because also you're looking at then, if you're cooking, you need your extraction to be very powerful because you don't want the odors going into the open space. But at the same time, it needs to be very quiet because you don't want it to overpower conversation, etc., in those open spaces. So it's the same with us as we look into the hybrid spaces for urbanization, smaller areas. What will that mean for products? So for example, with some of our toilets we're looking at odor absorption. That's very important, of course, as environments open up. We look at the acoustic values of showers, how can we make them quieter? And so we're looking at all of those sensorial elements that you probably wouldn't expect from a company like ours. And that's all to do with the urban environment. Sustainability is quite an interesting one. Sustainability for us, of course, we've really challenged ourselves to how can we do more with less. We're looking at our products being more efficient. We're looking at new materials. We're looking at chassis concepts. So faucets today are often manufactured from brass. They're very heavy to transport and ship. And we're really looking at innovative ways. We have patented technology at Grohe for zinc overmolding now, and ways that you can create what looks identical to a brass faucet, but actually it's much more efficient to ship and much better for the environment, so more sustainable. And then, of course, water consumption. We have smart control products like this, where consumers can simply press pause when they want to shampoo their hair, press play, and the water starts. So we're looking at the whole process of use for sustainability, and how we can reduce consumption and materials to ship and package those products. And that really goes into infinite detail. Like even, we would look at a new packaging product, and we would even weigh the instruction booklet inside and say, how can we reduce the weight of the instruction booklet? What's driving that weight? How can we use new digital forums, digital platforms to convey some of that information to consumers, so we don't have to print it, which is really bad for the environment. So lots and lots of ways we're looking at sustainability, and lots of innovation. So we have products in the kitchen. Behind me I have one in the corner. It's called Grohe Blue, and that dispenses chilled, carbonated, filtered water. So we don't have to buy plastic bottles anymore. We know how bad, of course, plastic is for the environment. So if you can eliminate all plastic water bottles that are shipped all over the world, and then immensely difficult to recycle, Blue's an amazing product, and you've got cold and chilled and filtered water on hand, so you have the convenience, but it's much more sustainable. So sustainability, we're looking at that, let's say, in many aspects, in terms of the experience, but also the actual physical, I would say, manufacture of the product. And then the third macro trend, which I think is probably the most interesting right now, the most relevant, is this concept of health and well-being, and particularly how that moves to hygiene. So of course, people are really looking at, we've seen a huge interest in the last 8-9 weeks, of course, with COVID-19, for consumers looking at sensor technologies, so hands-free technologies, and this whole area that we call, because those technologies they tend to be in the professional environment. One would expect them in public spaces, airports, etc. But now consumers, that we're calling them prosumers, so professional consumers, if you like, consumers that are looking to what's happening in the professional environment and how can they bring that into their homes? How can they look at touchless showers, touchless faucets? And that's driving a lot of what we do. We have a number of portfolios. We have in our portfolio a number of products, such as in kitchen, we have things like Mint Touch that you can control simply by using your elbow, so not your hands if you've got cross contaminants that you're cooking with, etc. or you don't want to, let's say, cross-contaminate in the area. And we can even control that with your feet and in different types of ways. We have sensor technology. And again, combining the hands-free element, we have sensor faucets, and we have a full range of sensor faucets in all different typologies, from modern to more authentic and different price positions. But we have sensor faucets, which are super clever. You can program them to how sensitive they are. You can program them for, let's say, the depth of their sensor. So how close do you have to be for it to switch on, and for how long, and at what temperature. And we even have boxes that sit underneath the sensor faucets that have mini aqua turbines that actually are used. So they're super eco and super convenient, but they actually power as the water's drawn in for the faucet. The turbine inside draws enough power to power the sensor. So we've got lots of products in our portfolios, lots of products which allow you to interface with things in a different way. We also have things in the health and hygiene way, like Grohe has produced a product called Sensi Arena, which is taking our Japanese technology from the Inax brand and the LIXIL portfolio, and then using the Grohe quality and design and engineering to produce a product like Sensi Arena, which, as you walk into the environment, the toilet lid lifts. You can go to the toilet, you don't have to touch anything, it will close and it will flush itself. And so we have a number of products like those which are talking of health and hygiene. You don't need to use toilet paper. So I know that's particularly important right now. We've had big toilet paper shortages all over the world. And of course, with the Grohe Sensi Arena, you don't need toilet paper. It washes you, it dries you, it pretty much does everything, takes away odor. So we have lots of products that are really looking at, I think, that element which is convenient right now, which is you're not touching the product, so you're not contaminating surfaces. And then there are lots of health benefits as well.
And you said that consumers are spotting those kind of touchless technologies in airports and hotels and wanting to have them in the home, but presumably there's been a big increase in demands from hotels, from public spaces as well for touchless technologies.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, we've seen a huge uptake of actually people coming to us as a brand and saying, we'd like to completely change now. We have whole buildings of faucets, and we'd like to change all of that stuff to your sense technology. We know it's been on the market, we know it's proven, it's tested. So how can we swap out our products, our existing products? Because people going back to work, of course, in the next few months, the workplace is going to be a very different place, and hygiene is going to be top of the list as people, let's say, integrate back into the workforce. And so there's huge interest for some of these technologies that will allow consumers to navigate, or in this case, allow people at work to navigate those spaces without contaminating the surfaces.
So Paul, how exactly does a touchless tap work? What's the technology that enables that to happen?
So we have a number of technologies with touchless. We have everything from capacitive sensors. So for example, on our kitchen faucets, on things like Minter, if you just make a connection, not with your hand, the capacitive, the circuit is created and it switches the faucet on through a solenoid. So that's touchless. And we've had some really nice feedback. Recently, we had a really nice letter from a consumer that was talking about, they had an operation actually recently, and they were talking about the house that they were in. They couldn't share the same space because their immune system was really low, which is very relevant at this moment in time. And they said, they just wrote a letter to say, thanks so much for that product, because they didn't realize how important it would be. But now in the circumstance they find them in, but having that touchless technology where you're not cross-contaminating surfaces that was originally designed for food actually is proving to be incredibly beneficial. And that's capacitive sensing. Then, of course, we have things like infrared. So on many of our faucets, we use infrared, which are proximity sensors that push out signal and take a signal back to understand that people are there. I mean, and we've had, again, over the years, we've really refined our technology, because originally infrared didn't like black. So with lots of architects and designers wearing black, it was an issue. But the infrared now works incredibly well.
Until quite recently, the bathroom was probably the last part of the house where technology became widespread. It sounds like, from talking to you, it sounds like that's changed, that technology has finally come together with water.
I can remember having these discussions in 2005 and, people being, talking about digital technology then in the bathroom and people being very resistant because they just thought, the bathroom's perfect. You don't need to change anything. I just turn a tap on, it comes on, washes my hand. What more would I need? That's great. Why would I need anything else? And so obviously starting to explore consumer usage, and that's when ethnographic research is really good. You start to see how people navigate, use things, all that kind of stuff. You start to pick up on all the habits that people have. So if you just imagine yourself, you wake up in the morning, you have a shower, you want to shampoo your hair. It's too cold to step out completely of the water. So you leave all the shower running, liters and liters of water. You try and shampoo your hair to one side, then you go back under. And we saw with digital technology, if you had a simple pause button, the water that you would save just in that moment that you could pause the water just to shampoo your hair and then press play and the water starts again. Having presets, so your shower knows the exact temperature that you like to shower at, so you're not wasting water trying to find that temperature, which is the same every day. Having, like I do in my own house, having faucets in my children's bathrooms where, when my children, they'd leave the tap on, it would run all day if they had their way. So in our house, we have sensor faucets, which are for the professional space, but I brought them into the children's bathrooms because when they brush their teeth, the water only comes on when the toothbrush goes underneath. It doesn't need to be singing and on all the time when they're not using it. So some of these technologies are really, really helpful. But what we always say is technology is there as an enabler. It has to be there to serve human beings and people. And if you use technology for the sake of it, I think it's irrelevant and it doesn't help. But I think if your insight-driven technology comes through in a product, I think it can be really helpful. And I think the bathroom is slowly changing, not probably at the pace that I would like it to and that we could. But I think with the introduction now in Europe in particular of the Japanese technology coming through on some of the toilets, the valve technologies they have, and sensor technologies, Grohe having access to all of that technology, I mean, it's so exciting because the products that will start to come through in the bathroom are going to be more and more interesting and offer more options to serve the consumer. And my job and my team's job at Grohe will be just to make sure that we keep relevant, that we only bring technology in if it actually is a benefit to the user.
How do you work with architects? I'm sure architects are key amongst your clients, and what is your relationship with them and how do you work with them and learn from them?
Yeah, I mean, I from the very beginning, working really closely with architects and interior design has been really important to us because, for us, we can't respond to trends. Products take anything between 12 months and 24 months to bring to fruition. So we can't be, let's say, working on the back of trends that already exist because otherwise we'd be too late. So we work with architects as a rich source of information just to understand where things are going in society, what's important, how are buildings evolving and usage of buildings. And also, I would say in lots of the architectural forums that I follow and work with, I think you get lots of information just about society in general, what things are evolving and why are they evolving. And whilst it doesn't give you the answer for a product, it gives you a feeling for what's becoming more important to society. And that's really important to us. And I think, I find architects are always very much willing to share that information. And as a product designer, not a threat to an architect, I think. So I always find them absolutely fascinating that they share this information and it helps us to create a space because the products that we create, they're very intimate. They're so human focused. People put them in their hands, they surround their bodies with our products. And so the relationship between the building and the interior space and then the product experience, it's really important that that's holistic and it comes together closer. So we've benefited immensely from working closely with architects.
Thanks so much, Paul. The bathroom is often seen as a very rational space. How is that changing?
If we look at the progression of the bathroom, definitely a rational space for cleaning and grooming. But now we're looking at this as, it's one of the only rooms left in the house that has a lock on the door. It's potentially the last sanctuary of your home. And if you have children, you'll realize how important that sanctuary can be. We're starting to see a transition now, environments coming together, especially what's happened, I think, in recent weeks and months. We're starting to see consumers bringing home fitness meditation, all things that I would say improve their health and well-being. And we're starting to see bathrooms morph into other spaces like potentially a bathroom, and then utilize that space by turning that into your fitness room as well. So we're starting to see a surge in things like Peloton, these home exercise systems, and they need an environment, and the bathroom is underutilized as a space, an architectural space in the home. So if you can combine that space, like I said, either combined with the bedroom, we see that as a big trend, but also as a health and well-being sanctuary. I think there's lots we can do in the bathroom space to improve mental wellness and health and well-being.
So where's all this leading then, Paul? If technology is becoming more integrated into the bathroom, what is the bathroom of the future going to be like?
If I take, for example, one of our latest products for Grohe, the Sensi Arena, so the shower toilet, the spa toilet. If you look at the technology that's inside now with odor absorption, the lid opens automatically when you walk in the room, it has lights, it's kind of intelligent, then I think in the future we're going to see, I would say, a more end-to-end link with the consumer. So a toilet could potentially be incredibly important in their whole nutritional cycle. So toilets in the future may have sensors that can tell the consumers what their dietary inefficiencies are. And they could look at everybody in the house, for example, and they could even toilets could even make menu recommendations, and perhaps even order stuff from supermarkets that tell you, this week the family is particularly low on iron or vitamin X or Y, and we recommend these few menus that's directly linked digitally, perhaps with a food, I would say, supplier. And you could start to look at, really, without getting into the details of what goes on in the toilet, but sensing technology that really could talk about your individual dietary requirements and how we can improve your health and well-being through a product like that, through sensors, etc. So I think, there's lots and lots of things, obviously, that we work on, and lots of, I would say, ideas of what the future could look like. But I honestly believe what we're going to start to see is, with the introduction of things like 5G and technologies that can talk to each other, I think we can start to, if we use technology in the correct way, again, to serve human beings and people, as opposed to just using technology, I think we can start to link some of these things up so they can really improve our health and well-being.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Paul. It's been fascinating talking to you. Hope to see you again soon.
Good stuff. Thanks, Marcus. Take care.